Welcome to our sixth session as part of our series on study in Europe. Today's session is on masters and PhDs in France. We've already done a few sessions, and I'm just going to talk you through that. Uh, and I'll introduce you to Project EduAccess and the series. I introduce you to the panelists who will then take over and talk to you about masters and PhD applications in France, as well as generally student life, work opportunities, and career prospects if you do decide to pursue your higher education in France. Um, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are Project EduAccess. We believe that access to higher education, leadership, and professional opportunities is a privilege that most people from marginalized communities are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. And we try to improve inclusivity in these spaces by removing some of these barriers for marginalized communities in the global south. We do this by adopting four key interventions: mentoring, counseling, role modeling, information, advice, and guidance, capacity building, and leadership skill development, and evidence-based advocacy. Um, so, as I mentioned, today's session is part of our Study in Europe series. We've already conducted 5 sessions, and the recording of each of these sessions will be available on our YouTube channel. I'll send a link to that shortly after the presentation. We've specifically done sessions on master's applications, PhD applications. We've done a session on the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters program, and we've covered Italy and Germany as 2 places to pursue your master's or PhD. And now we are covering France, and then we'll do Netherlands, Switzerland, Spain in the upcoming 3 weeks. To support us in our endeavor and to speak to you today, we have with us 3 very wonderful panelists. We have with us Prarthana, who's I'm sure is a very familiar face. She's joined us in many of our workshops. She's doing a PhD in political science from Sciences Po in Paris and also did her master's at the same university. We have with us Ikya, who's doing an MSc in sustainability and social innovation from HEC Paris, and Shefali, who's doing a master's in public policy from Sciences Po in Paris. Our panelists are fluent in English, Hindi, Marathi, Kannada, Telugu, and French. So if you want to ask your question in a language other than English, feel free to do so. Um, Thank you so much once again, Pratna, Aiki, and Shefali, for joining us today and for speaking to applicants. And I will now hand it over to Shefali.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Misbah. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
All right, great. All right, so I'll provide a quick overview first about the process for France. And many people are attracted to the country for its cultural heritage. Everybody's heard about the country, and while it's also a leading nation in terms of global rankings of universities. More so in the last few years, if you've checked up the QS rankings, we have a lot of universities up there. So, one thing I think that I'd like to highlight is that studying in Europe in general offers a chance to engage with a lot of international community and build networks across multiple European countries, something that is advantageous in other than other countries such as the UK or Canada. And in the next slide, I can tell you about why you can choose France. Um, France has strong ties with industries. First, as everybody might know, there's luxury goods, there's aeronautics. These are some of the strong points, and a lot of scientific research also takes place in France. And the tuition fees for master's programs are also not quite that high, especially in public universities. So in public universities, these might be ranging from around 200 euros to 500 euros per year, which is significantly lower than other countries. And exceptions are also there, including my university, that's Sciences Po in Paris, and several business schools as well, which might have a little higher tuition fees, but then we can talk later about funding. And yeah, France offers a great 2-year work visa extension for people from non-EU countries and nationalities. And there are especially strong ties, as you may know, between France and India that are helpful for obtaining a visa after that even more easily. And scholarships are also there for universities, like I talked about. There's the Eiffel Scholarship, there's the Chapak Scholarship, which are very helpful, and these are offered by the French government. So these are uh, significant funding opportunities that ideally everybody should be applying to. And beyond this, also, there are a lot of private funding options and easy loans thanks to the rankings of these universities. Um, we can see the application process for the master's programs first in the next slide. Um, and I think all the documentations that you may require to apply to any other university around the world are also required here. So that's an SOP, that's CV, your achievements, your academic history, etc., and your letters of recommendations. Beyond this, some universities might have certain other requirements, such as tests for English or for French, but that's dependent on the program and the university. And Campus France provides all the information that you may need for different universities, and you can apply through Campus France's portal to many public universities as well. So that's there for sure. However, having said that, there are many universities, again, like Sciences Po and even HEC, that IKEA can talk about later, and other business schools that have separate applications which don't go through Campus France. So while a lot of good universities and public universities are done through this singular platform, you may need to check for specific schools also. And the process is also it's open until April or even May. However, again, having said that, there are scholarships that I spoke about which may have earlier deadlines, and these deadlines are around November, December. So that's again something that you need to keep in mind while thinking about applying. And yeah, over to Prarthana.
Thank you so much, Shefali. So I will basically talk about the application process for a PhD. So as compared to the US and other countries, when you start a PhD, France considers a PhD as a full-time job. So most of the times you don't have coursework. Again, this might depend from university to university, but most of the PhDs do not have a coursework as such. So it is important for you to know what research area that you want to work on. You should have like a broad research idea, research theme in mind, and most of the PhD applications also require you to submit a research proposal. So when you are applying for a PhD in France, basically you need to have a broader idea of what you want to work on. So you can, of course, like contact supervisors and through them through their email or or through institutional websites. In some cases, the institution might specify that you need to have a supervisor. In some cases, they want you to just apply and then they will assign you a supervisor. But I think it is always a good practice to reach out to people and ask them to take a look at your research proposal, and also make sure that you have a supervisor when you're applying so that you can indicate that in your SOP. For applying, you need to have a master's degree and you need to have a well defined research proposal. In most of the cases, they also require you to write a master's thesis. So, if you have already done a master's degree in France, you have this option to take one semester to write a thesis or do an internship. If it's a research master's, you will write a thesis, of course. But so that thesis will form a very important part of your application. So make sure you check the guidelines very well. And applications are again directly submitted to the university or through Campus France website with CV, letter of references, and any prior publications. Though it is encouraged to have publications at the PhD level, they also understand that it's not possible to have a publication at this level. So even if you do not have any publication, it is okay. That is completely fine as well. Many PhD positions, like I said, are salaried. So they consider you as an employee. So there are three types of funding when you do a PhD in France. The first one is the contra doctora, which basically means that you are a salaried person in the institution. You get a stipend that is nationally mandated, and you're working there as a student. So because of that, your tuition fee is waived. So you are not paying anything; you're just getting paid. The second option is doing a project-based PhDs. So a lot of researchers have received grant money through ERCs and different other funds, and for their project, they require a PhD student to work for their project and also do a PhD at the same time on the similar topic. So in this case, the call for application is not institutionalized, rather it is through direct application. So you apply to that particular project in a particular lab at times, and then you sort of work towards the project, and your salary would be based out of the fund, and the institution does not pay you. So that is one type of funding, and project based funding is found primarily in STEM, but I think now there's an increase in that in social sciences as well. A third way of funding your PhD is doing a CIFRA. So CIFRA is basically an agreement between you and another organization that will basically fund your PhD, and you have to work for them like 2 days a week or 3 days a week. So depending on different situations. So I have some colleagues who are doing CIFRA. So basically they go to office, work 3 days a week, and the other days they focus on their PhD. So if you are doing a PhD, for example, in sustainability studies, and you have an organization that is willing to sponsor you, then getting into a CIFRA would be a great idea to sponsor your PhD. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? So, talking about scholarships and financial aid, like Shefali said, I think one of the best things about studying in France is you have a lot of options to apply for financial aid. The first one is the Eiffel Scholarship for Masters and PhD. It covers your tuition fees, your living expenses. It will cover your tuition only if you are a public university student, but not in case of private. So if you're doing a PhD, like a master's at Sciences Po, unfortunately they will not pay for you. But if you're studying in a public university, it's paid for. So basically, if you're studying in a public university and you get Eiffel, you are basically making money to come to France. So I think that's a great deal to have. It does cover your living expenses and it does cover your airfare. So if you're studying in a private university, you're basically just focusing on your tuition fees, but everything else is covered. And also because you're a scholarship student, you also get a lot of facilities. Like there are a lot of cruise restaurants here, so you get €1 meal. And like Shefali and I have literally survived on that €1 meal for a very long time. So yes, so it is also targeted at international students because they really want other people to come. So that is the aim. So the application to Eiffel is through the institution. So you cannot directly apply for the scholarship. So when you are applying, so most of the universities, that is why they have a different deadline for Eiffel scholarship. So you apply for the Eiffel scholarship a little before the normal application, and then among all the applications the university receives, they will basically nominate some people for the scholarship, and then the ministry will like have a lot of applications, and from those applicants they will give Eiffel for 340 students, I think 340 to 360 at a master's level. For the PhD level, they fund you for 1 year. So again, that is through the institution as well. Then you have a lot of campus France scholarships as well. It ranges from country to country, region to region. I think recently they had also introduced one scholarship for a very specific course. I'm not able to recall the name, but I think going through a campus France website is a very good idea if you really want to like apply to France. Then you have the Charpak scholarship. So the deadline is usually about around April, the first week of April. And so for that, you need to have the letter of acceptance. So by that time, if you're applying to like Sciences Po and other universities, they usually give you a decision by then. So you have to apply, you have to write a statement of purpose about, why you deserve the scholarship. You have to submit your CV and other documents and letter of acceptance as well. And even in Charpak, there are different levels of Charpak. So in one type of Charpak, you get the scholarship, and you get the stipend, and the other type of Charpak provides you with housing assistance. So there are like different levels to Charpak as well. And then you also have the university specific scholarship. So for instance, at Sciences Po, you have the ML Bootme scholarship that basically waives off your tuition at different levels. So depending upon what level you are, like one of my friends, she got her 60% tuition fees waived. So there are different levels of ML Bootme, and similarly, other university also have their own specific scholarship. But then again, that is why go to the website and check the different scholarship deadlines. Because, for instance, if you're applying for EIFL or other scholarships, it is always better to make an application before the deadline so that you are considered. And scholarship is like a number game. Like, the more scholarships you apply to, the more, the better your chances are getting at what. Like, I personally applied for 7 scholarships and I got one. So it's just like, the more you apply, the better. Can we have next slide, please? Okay, so student life in France. Let me now convince you why you need to come to France. Okay, Macron hasn't paid me, but this is why I chose to remain back in France after I finished my PhD. There's affordable tuition, of course. Like if you're doing in public university, it's great. In private, of course, you'll have to invest a little money, but I think it is so much less than what you would pay in a UK university or in the US. So that's there. Monthly expenses would depend around 700 to 1,200, depending on the city that you live. And also depending on, I think the major chunk of the expenses is accommodation. So you know, if you're able to find a decent accommodation within a certain price range, I think you will save a lot of money. Then there is also amazing student residences. So you have Cruise, which is like a government of France initiative for students. Then you also something called as the Cité Université. So like different countries and like different embassies have their own housing arrangement in like one big area. So that's why it's called Cité Université. And again, their rent is subsidized, and it's a great student community to have. And of course, there's like cultural immersion. You get to experience a different city, you get to experience a different culture. And also, along with that, so if you're below 26 and if you're a student, you get free entry to museums. You also get, so we have something called as Navigo, that is like, like the monthly card you pay to go for. To travel in bus, metro. So if you're under 26, you get 50% off. And then you also have uh, access to museums. I think I already spoke about. But you also have CAF, that is the housing assistance. So if, for example, your rent is for like 400 euros or something, the government might pay you 100 to 150 euros back. So you also get housing assistance. And I think it is really good. And because you're in the Schengen area, you can also visit other countries very easily with the same visa. So I think it also gives you opportunities to like, grow and grow as a person as well. So from here, I'll hand it over to Ikea.
Thank you, Prarthana. Yeah, so these are some of the opportunities you have to work while being a student and while being on the student visa. So you can work part time up to 20 hours per week to a maximum of 964 hours per year. And here I'm talking about the types of jobs which include both on campus and off campus jobs, which you can do while still being enrolled as a as a full time student in a university. For instance, on campus job can include like teaching assistant, research assistant, but also maybe supporting in the library, etc. And of course, these are paid. I think some around like 9 euros per hour up until I believe 12 to 15 euros per hour. I need to check the exact amount, but they're paid. In off-campus jobs can, of course, include like working in a cafe, restaurant, bar, working as a nanny, so on. So part-time is definitely possible. It's paid. It can be an extra source of income to help you with your living expenses, but also a word of caution because you can't also completely rely on these. Not to mention that when you first go to a new country, you, as it is, have to deal with a lot of administrative bureaucratic burden and looking for internships and jobs and new curriculum and education system. So it can all get very busy very quickly. So keep that in mind. And not overly rely on this source as a source of income. However, outside of this, many universities in France do have internship or professional experience requirements as a part of their curriculum in itself. And how that is integrated into their curriculum, it can look very different for different universities. For instance, I had done a 1 year master's from HEC, and my coursework was just for like 12 months. But in order to validate the course, I had to mandatorily complete a 4 to 6 month internship or a job in order to get my final degree. But that was because mine was a 1 year course. For people who are doing 2 year courses at HEC, it was the Masters in Management, the MIM program, but also many other 2 year masters courses in France give you the option of taking an optional gap year in between the 2 years, which can be a way for you to gain some professional experience and also gain some professional experience. And in some cases, you can there's also, I believe, an option. I've heard of people also taking 2 gap years in between their 2 years, so entire course stretching up to like 4 years. And also, I think Shefali or Prarthana, one of you had also mentioned that a few universities I know also give you the option of in one of the semesters to do either a thesis or to do an internship. Like I know many people from Sciences Po who were taking some courses in the university, but also working part-time for 20 hours per week. So that could be an option to also have some extra income. But again, that also depends upon the type of course, etc. And additionally, I also know few universities which kind of offer this apprenticeship model, which is like a work study training program. Again, this is a professional contract which is signed between the university and the organization and yourself. And this is a kind of arrangement in which 3 days a week you work with the company and 2 days you work, you attend classes and you attend university. So this could also be a nice way to get some experience, integrate more professionally, earn and have some sort of a financial support as well. Again, not every university allows it, because I know just in business schools, HEC does not have this. You have to be a full-time student and you cannot do this sort of work. But I know ESSEC, which is another business school, which has this apprenticeship model. I know Sciences Po has it for some courses. And even in this also, few universities allow it just for their second year. Few universities allow it for both their first year and second year. So just to say that these are some of the options available for you, but what is suitable is something that you will have to go and check on the specific course requirements for the program and for that particular university. So next slide, Misbah, please. So in terms of jobs, the job market, I think it's just dependent on so many factors. What university you go to, what course you pursue, what are the skills that you build in the course of pursuing your masters, what kinds of sectors and jobs and profiles you're looking for. There are a number of factors, and it's very hard to kind of give you like make a blanket statement on the job market. But having said that, if I had to like more generically had to give my 2 cents on what I have seen personally work the best, I would say that networking does make a big difference. I think it's something I kept hearing over and over again when I first went to France. And I do agree with it as well. Like it does help to know people, and you also use your masters and your PhD and your time in France as a way to build these sort of contacts and networks. And I would say that most universities do often like provide you with the conditions and the multiple avenues to do so. Like they have career support services, alumni networks, workshops, their counselors to help you with your CV, cover letter. They bring in organizations to the campus. They have like academic conferences to cocktail events to networking events, where you will be given that kind of opportunity to get to know people, and they will give you the resources, basically any sort of academic institution. But how you sort of make use of it will, and how proactive you are, will kind of depend on you ultimately. How you reach out to people, how proactive you are. And when I say contacts, it doesn't mean someone very high up the hierarchy, not at all. It could be your friends, it could be your classmates who know you very well, who might have previously interned somewhere and are willing to put you in touch. it really starts from there. And then, of course, are your course supervisors, your professors whom you'll interact with, and of course, also the more formal professional events such as conferences and networking events and so on. And yeah, it does kind of go without saying that at least in France, it does help if you intend to continue work and living in France. It does help to know the language. Makes your life easier. I'm not saying it's like, you can't find a job without knowing the language. Not at all. I know many people who have done that. But also knowing it does open up a lot of doors for you professionally, but also like personally and socially. It does make your life slightly easier, I would say. In terms of the visa, so Indian students do benefit from a 2-year post-study job search slash business creation residence permit, uh, who have completed a master's degree or equivalent from a French university. And it is really one of those advantages being from India, because it is not the case for all other nationalities. As Shefali mentioned, we do have good relations with France. And this is because of a bilateral agreement between France and India and a few other countries that we get the 2-year visa, because as a norm, you normally just, most other nationalities just get it for like 1 year. And we get it for like 1 year again, which is renewable for another year. And it is definitely a big advantage. It's more than what Indians get in most other European countries, if I'm not wrong, and it's also more than what most other nationalities get in France. So, next slide, Misbah, please. So here are just some very general tips to guide you. So I think whenever you start looking at universities and courses and eligibility requirements and scholarship applications, I think it can all get very overwhelming very quick, and it's kind of easy to go down a rabbit hole. But whenever I speak to people, one thing I suggest is to always kind of take it as a more of a reflective exercise, as to just ask yourself in what is it that you want to get out of the course. What are those determining factors for you? Is it the finances? Is it the post-study job opportunities, the curriculum, the course structure, the duration of a course, whatever it is? And it varies a lot from person to person, but you ask yourself this and kind of use this as a way to use it as a way to anchor you and in navigating the process. And there are number of factors, which is why always better to start early, be more structured, be more planned, be more organized. I found it very useful to kind of maintain an Excel sheet where I came across all the courses I was interested in, their eligibility, funding, deadlines, everything in one place. And then it was easier for me to know what was my priority, what I could eliminate, when to apply for what, when should I reach out to, like, even because you also need to reach out to your references. And if you're especially if you're applying for multiple universities, when do I need you to submit this reference for when? Because they have their own schedule, and they can also plan accordingly and tell you if they're not, they won't be able to give it to you, right? And you can think of alternatives. So look out for referees who would be invested in you, who would put in a little bit of their time and effort into your application. Very, very important again to sort of customize your essays based on the university, the course. Also, while applying to the scholarship, go to the course page, go to the university, go to the scholarship application page. There's so much information out there publicly available. Try to understand what is it that they're trying to look for, and then highlight those aspects of your profile which kind of align and fit into those criteria. So always sort of don't try just try to make sure that your voice shines through in all of this, like make it as original as possible. It's good to take inspiration from something else, but ultimately it should also be as original and authentic to you as possible. Proofread it multiple times, show it to people whom you trust and who would be invested in you and will give you that sort of a constructive feedback. It's something I immensely benefited from. One last thing I would say is do not hesitate to ever reach out to people. So I mean, there were times when I was applying and I was just so clueless. But just LinkedIn was a good resource for me. Even just a message to someone saying, "Hey, I'm doing this. I would really appreciate your advice. I would be very grateful if you could take out 20 minutes of your time." And more, in many cases, of course, in many cases, people ghosted me, but there were many people who were very kind to take out that 15-20 minutes, talk me, guide me through, tell me how their interview experience has been, tell me their reflections on the course, which helped me so much, because in my interview with HEC, I was able to sort of bring in those points and show that I did my research and I do think it makes an impact. So I think that is all. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, all of you. That was very comprehensive and I'm sure very helpful. So we now move to the Q&A part of the session. Um, I'm just going to spotlight everyone. Yeah. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and ask your question, or if you can put your question in chat. I see there is already a question, so I'm going to read that out. And in the meantime, please put your questions in chat, or you can send it to me as well um, as a DM. So the first question is, what is the level of DELF exams usually the universities are considering for master's scholarships in France? Is it necessary to finish the C1 level, or is that sufficient to complete till B1?
Um, I moved to France with one word in French, bonjour, and I was fine. I got the Eiffel. So I think, like, if you're applying to a degree that requires you to have like a certain level of French proficiency, then yes, you need to have DELF exams. But for scholarships, you do not need to have French proficiency. At least most of the government of France scholarships do not require you to have that. So it's completely fine if you do not know French.
Great. Another question is, most of the scholarships have an age bar of 30 years. What funding options remain for a person above 30?
I'm not sure if anybody has a more concrete answer. For me, I feel like France is very friendly for people under 26, including in terms of scholarships and funding. So even when for people over the age of 27, there are a lot of discounts that you may get in restaurants, that you may get in the travel card that Prarthana spoke about, and in museums, etc., that are not applicable anymore. So I guess maybe that's why that a lot of the government scholarships are aimed towards people under 30. But having said that, I think all these funding opportunities that I spoke about, uh, there are a lot of people who work while they're studying, and there are a lot of programs that allow you to use these your the rest of your time to do an apprenticeship, etc., which is a concept that is specific, I think, to European countries, that and it's very accepted. A lot of companies are very well aware of the fact that if you're in university, you will be seeking out apprenticeships at point of your program. So I think that's one big thing, because the company that you're doing this work with has to pay your tuition fees necessarily. They have to give you a restaurant card, and there's a lot of other benefits, and a travel card, etc. So yeah, that's a big part. There are personal loans, etc., of course, which are discounted with certain universities if you go through certain funds. But yeah, that's those are the kinds of things that I think are helpful.
Yeah. Unless anyone else has anything to add, I'll take the next question, which is for Ikea. Does the Sustainability and Social Innovation degree at HEC have an internship or apprenticeship as part of its program?
No, unfortunately, they don't have an apprenticeship model. So this particular master's course, it's like 1 year master's followed by a 6 month professional experience. And in that 1 year of master's, the coursework, you are a full-time student and you cannot sort of do any other internships or anything during that time. Like I don't think the university will sign the internship agreement. But having said that, if you want to take up any other part-time work as a teaching assistant, research assistant on campus, that option is available. And regarding the internship, so you need to kind of do the internship after that 1 year. Like after the 1 year of coursework, you will have to do a 4 to 6 month of internship in order to validate the course. And it is only after that that you get your final degree. So not during your studies. So with HEC, the funding can be a little bit of a problem. It is a little bit expensive. It's a private business school, and even the internal university scholarships which are offered, maximum I've only know that they cover up to like 5,000 euros as a tuition fee waiver, which is not so much considering the overall fee cost. And also, even to take up any part-time work elsewhere, the campus is really far away from Paris. So within that ecosystem, it's quite hard to find any other part-time work as well. So that's something to keep in mind, particularly with HEC.
Thank you, Kia. The other question is master's dissertation mandatory for PhD applications in France? My university didn't have it as part of our program, so what can one do to qualify such an eligibility criteria?
Okay, so most of the PhD programs in France require you to have a master's thesis. Like when I was applying to Sciences Po, master's thesis was one of the important factor and important part of my PhD. If your master's if you haven't done a master's that required you to write a thesis, I think I would highly recommend you to take a master's which will require you to write a thesis. Not only because of this eligibility criteria, but because if you're applying to France, you will be directly asked to write a thesis, right? And if you do not have any prior experience of writing a small thesis, it would be very difficult for you to cope up in terms of the research and the workload. So I think in this case it would be good to apply for a degree. And like I'm just like combining the next question as well, because there are a lot of people who also get into M2. So M2 is basically the second year of masters. So if you already have masters, some universities allow you to directly get into the second year of a particular master's program, and then you can basically proceed into doing a PhD. So if you are going into the second year of masters, your second semester there would be writing a thesis. So in that way, you're just doing 1 year masters and also figuring out and you're also writing a thesis, which makes you eligible for other PhD options as well. So I think that is something you can probably consider.
Yeah, and I think the third question as part of that is also about the distinction between the M1 and M2 graduate study. So maybe if you could just give an overview of what that means.
So M1 is basically first year of masters and M2 is basically second year of masters. So they just call it M1, M2. And a lot of people who have already done one masters, they sometimes they like get. I have a friend who did his like masters from Sciences Po, and then he directly moved to M2 in a different university because he had already done one masters from Sciences Po. So that is also possible. So you can check the criteria, and I think that's a good option if you just want to like write a thesis and get an experience and then go for a PhD.
And also, like if you already have, let's say, if you've done a master's in India, if you've done a 2 year master's in India and you don't want to do another 2 year master's, but the program is for 2 years, then you can try to enter the program just in the M2, citing your previous expertise in that field.
Thank you both. Another question is my visa got rejected while applying for Italy because my brother was my sponsor. Is it same for France that only parents or yourself or the self can be a sponsor?
I mean, I can try answering it, but I'm not too sure. So just check again that I think it should be okay that if a sibling sponsors, but again, I think if your parents sponsor, you need to have like that affidavit notarized. They need to have like enough savings. Like there's some bar on how much. I think for France, it was like the living expenses at that point of time when 2 years back when I was applying for my visa, it was like 700 something euros. So you need to show 700 into 12 that for the entire year that you're able to have enough savings and you can you have those funds. So I think it's more about the resources rather than if it's your sibling or your parents, but I might be wrong. I don't have experience of this.
I think it would be a good idea to check the VFS guideline, because as much as I remember when I had gone to the VFS office, it's been 3 years, so like the criteria changes a lot. I think it is better to check with them, because I remember, I think if you are if they are your parents, you don't need to submit an affidavit. No, you need to submit an affidavit, but if your blood relatives are sponsoring other than your parents, then you need to submit another document. So just check to be on the safer side.
And normally, Campus France does help a lot with visa related queries as well. Like it's a good resource, like reaching out to Campus France as well. And they also have like a number of articles on their website, like giving you guides, guiding you through the entire visa process. So that can also be a way you can find out more about this.
Great. So there is a follow-up question to the M1, M2, the master's dissertation aspects. I'm just going to ask that first, which is, can't one share their research term papers based on primary data collection from their masters?
Um, Again, because master's thesis has a very particular requirement that um uh, it might depend from university to university, but most of the universities I know about require you to have a research master's degree. It doesn't compensate for like doing research in terms of like courses or research term papers. And this is also not in just in France, but most of the other universities. I remember when I was applying to University of Oslo, they had the certain requirement that I need to write a thesis where I have utilized one semester to work on that thesis. So they also have that specific requirement. So I think it is like doing a thesis and writing a research term paper are very different things, and most of the time people require you to have a certain level of experience. Again, also from like my own suggestion, because I've it's been a year since I've been doing PhD. um if you have not done a master's thesis, I would highly urge you to do another master's that require you to do that, because when you're in PhD, you're on your own. Okay, it's just like you're working with your supervisor and you're trying to figure it out everything by yourself, right? So if you do not have prior experience on doing a master's thesis, like you do not have that experience, I think it will just make your PhD experience a lot more worse, and it will be very difficult for you to cope up. So from that perspective also, I think it is a good idea to do a master's thesis, a degree again with which requires you to have a master's thesis from a personal standpoint as well.
Thank you, Prarthana. There's a question culturally, how is the environment typically like for international students?
Uh,
Um,
so yeah, do you want to go ahead? I can
No,
join
I
in.
think this is something all of us can pitch in. So go ahead.
Yeah. Uh, I think it depends on a lot of factors. First is what university you go into. Also, where are you staying? So I was very lucky that I was living in a student accommodation and it was international. So that sort of helped me a lot to just feel at home. And then also it depends on your classmates, how international they are, and how is the classroom environment in general. So I think it depends on a lot of factors. So like just some tips to like start off with. I think it's a very good idea to live in student residences when you first move, because you will, find people like you who have also moved away from home, and who are trying to make sense in this new city that they've moved into. So I had a lot of really good friends. So like when you come back home, you have someone to talk to, like how your day was, and it makes a lot of difference. And then you can see if you want to like move to a colocation, or like where you're sharing apartment with different people or something like that. But till the time you're student, I think you should like live in a student residence. Second is, I think if you know to speak French, your life just becomes very easy. I moved to France when I was a Sanskrit student all my life, never learned French, and I started learning after I moved to the city. But I feel like if you know French, your life professionally also becomes very easy, and also socially while interacting with people and having just normal conversation and like having small talk, I think it becomes a lot easier. And third is, I think you should take take advantage of what Paris as a city offers you. Like even in France, like if you're going to Toulouse or other cities as well, I think most of the cities in France have something to offer you culturally, and they also have a lot of free activities. And like for an example, like um public access to swimming pools are really very easy. If you're someone who loves to play badminton, they also have access to badminton court free of cost as well. So again, it's you have a lot of opportunities. So make use of those, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, IKEA.
Yeah, no, nothing. Completely agree with everything Prarthana has said. Also, that all three of us here we've been to Sciences Po and HEC, which are extremely international environments where you meet people from across the world. It's entirely English speaking. So, unless you go to these kinds of universities, we also may not be the best people to give you that. But obviously, there are those general points as well, which Prarthana has mentioned, that Paris and in general France, you meet really interesting people, but you also need to sometimes be open to learning from them as well, be more curious. And there are, I would say, there, as she mentioned, there are so many things to do. And when you have interests, like it can be running, it can be sports, it can be books, it can be museums, it can be anything. There's always that opportunity to kind of have a community around your interests as well. So I won't say where if it is easy or difficult. I think that depends upon the individual person and how they cope with it, because it can be very different. It can be challenging, but it can also be like very rewarding at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. There's a few more questions in chat. I'm also mindful of time because I know we're almost reaching the 1 hour. So yes, the recording of this session will be available on our YouTube channel. I'll send a link to that shortly. Second question is for Pratna. Is it possible to enter M2 in political science and then join PhD in political science in Sciences Po?
uh, I am not sure if Sciences Po allows people to directly come into M2. At least I have not seen anyone like, shift to Sciences Po at M2 and then apply for a PhD. I think it would be a good idea to check with the university once again. So for Sciences Po, they also have an India representative. So her name is Neha Khanna, and she's the one who usually deals with, the administration stuff. And if you have any doubts, I think you can like reach out to her. So I think it is better to ask her, because I know people who have done it through PSC, but I'm not sure if Sciences Po takes in people at M2 level. At least I haven't encountered any. I'm sure there must be a provision, but again, I don't want to give a decisive answer. So I think it is better to check once with the university to be on the safer side.
Great. Another question is it mandatory to apply through Campus France, especially if I only want to apply to one or two universities with my preferred courses directly through their websites? I understand that for the visa process, applying through Campus France becomes essential after receiving an acceptance. However, paying 18,500 in INR for just one or two university applications does not seem reasonable.
Uh, I think you have to go through Campus France at some point after later, but I think it also depends on the universities that you want to apply to. Like, for example, I think Sciences Po and HEC have like a direct system where you just apply directly and then you go for Campus France when it comes at a visa level. But I think if you're applying to public universities, I think you need to go through Campus France. So, like shortlist the universities that you want to apply to, and I think it would be a great idea to check if you can apply directly or through Campus France. Because if you are required to go through Campus France, then I think you have to go through them. There's no other alternative. But if you're able to apply directly, you can apply directly, and then you can go through them during the visa process.
Okay, I think that's about it. Yeah. I don't see any other questions in chat here or in my DM. Do either of you have any questions in your DM? Okay. Okay, I think with that we are good on time and can end the session now. Again, if anyone has any questions, please put them in chat now. Um, or we end the session. As I said, the session is recorded and we will upload the recording of the session on our YouTube channel. I've sent a link to that in chat already. You'll find the recordings of all of our other workshops as part of the Study in Europe series or the Study in US series, or more generally on scholarship applications. We recently ran a session on the Charpak scholarship, I think 2 weeks ago. So you can find that recording on our website as well. And hopefully we'll do more scholarship sessions that are specific to Europe. Um, yes, with that, I will end. Thank you so much, Shefali, Prarthana, and Ikya for joining us today. And thank you everyone who has joined us. Hope you have a nice rest of your weekend. See you all. Bye. Take care.